They laughed at an old gardener in dirty clothes and humiliated him in front of everyone. But a few hours later, the same people were begging for his forgiveness. My name is William Carter. I am 68 years old. For 30 years I worked as the gardener of a luxury estate. Everyone believed I was just an old poor man who watered flowers and trimmed trees. No one knew the truth. The estate legally belonged to me, but I had hidden my identity to see who respected people for their character instead of their money. One day the owner's grandson announced his engagement party. Hundreds of wealthy guests arrived in expensive cars. I quietly continued watering the garden when a young businessman looked at me and laughed. He said, "Old man, stay away from the guests. You make this place look cheap." Everyone laughed and William smiled without saying a single word. William quietly put the watering hose aside and walked away without replying. The guests kept laughing, believing they had embarrassed an old gardener. Inside the mansion, the party became louder. Music played, people danced, and everyone praised the young businessman for putting the gardener in his place. A few minutes later, the estate manager rushed into the hall looking nervous. He walked straight to William and respectfully said, "Sir, the lawyers have arrived. They are waiting for you in the private office." The room suddenly fell silent. The same guests who had laughed at William looked at each other in confusion. The young businessman frowned and asked, "Why would lawyers be here for a gardener?" William smiled gently and replied, "Because today is the day everyone learns who really owns this estate." The entire hall froze in complete silence. The guests followed William to the grand hall, whispering to each other. No one believed what they had just heard. The lawyers placed a thick folder on the table and opened the official documents. One of them stood up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, these papers confirm that Mr. William Carter is the sole owner of this estate and every business connected to it." The room went completely silent. The young businessman who had insulted William turned pale. His smile disappeared. The estate manager handed William a small wooden box. Inside was a golden key and the original ownership certificate. William looked around the room and calmly said, "I worked as a gardener because I wanted to know who respected honest work. Today, I have my answer." The people who had laughed only moments before lowered their heads in shame. The young businessman slowly stepped forward and whispered, "Sir, I'm sorry." William looked into his eyes and replied, "An apology has value only when respect comes before the truth, not after it." The silence in the hall became even heavier. Everyone knew that the real lesson had just begun. The young businessman stood speechless. No one dared to look William in the eyes. William slowly walked to the center of the hall and said, "For 30 years I worked in this garden with my own hands. Every flower, every tree, and every path you admired today was cared for by me. Yet not one of you judged me by my character. You judged me by my clothes." The guests felt ashamed. Then William made one final announcement. "Starting today, every employee of this estate will receive a salary increase and full health benefits. The people who work the hardest deserve the greatest respect." The workers couldn't hold back their tears, but William's voice became serious. "As for those who insulted and humiliated others because they believed money made them superior, you are no longer welcome on my property." Security quietly walked toward the young businessman and the guests who had mocked William. For the first time in their lives, they realized that true wealth is not measured by money, it's measured by character. Security escorted the rude guests toward the exit. The young businessman kept looking back, hoping William would change his mind. William calmly said, "You lost nothing today except the respect you threw away with your own words." The workers gathered around William and thanked him for treating them with dignity for so many years. Just then, one of the lawyers handed William another envelope. William opened it, smiled, and made one final surprise announcement. "Today I am creating a scholarship fund for the children of every employee. No hardworking family should have to give up their dreams because of money." The hall filled with applause. The same people who had laughed at the old gardener now watched from outside the gates, realizing they had judged the richest man there by the dirt on his clothes instead of the kindness in his heart. That day, everyone learned a lesson they would never forget. Never underestimate someone because of their job. Respect is earned by character, not by wealth. A few weeks later, the story spread across the entire city. People praised William Carter not because he was wealthy, but because he had remained humble even after being insulted. The young businessman lost several business partnerships. Companies no longer wanted to work with someone known for disrespecting hardworking people. One afternoon, he came back to the estate alone. This time, he wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He stood quietly at the gate and asked to meet William. When they met, he lowered his head and said, "I judged you by your clothes. I was wrong. I want to become a better person." William smiled gently. The greatest revenge is not destroying someone's life. It is teaching them a lesson that changes it forever. The young man thanked William with tears in his eyes and walked away a different person. From that day on, the estate became known as a place where every worker from the gardener to the manager was treated with equal respect. The end.